Eskom is officially 100 years old today. Let's speak to Chris Yelland, Managing Director at EE Business Intelligence, to talk about this. Chris, a very good evening to you. One of the few people, I don't know if you're fortunate or unfortunate to share a birthday with Eskom. Good to have you with us today. Happy birthday. How does Eskom fare compared to other centenarians?
Thank you, and thanks for your birthday wishes, both to me, and may I also wish Eskom a happy birthday on the same day. 100 years is a long time, and it's a significant achievement as a utility. Bottom line is Eskom is currently structured as it was set up 100 years ago by Hendrik van der Bijl as a vertically integrated utility to serve the electricity needs of South Africa. And compared to Eskom's peers, Eskom hasn't changed much at all over this time, whereas Eskom's peers, companies like Telkom, Eskom, and Sasol, have radically changed to become successful businesses in their own right, all of them listed on the stock exchange in one form or another, and very different from what they were structured as 100 years ago. But Eskom hasn't changed up to now. But there is significant changes that are envisaged. They have been talked about since 1998, so for the last 25 years, but very little has actually happened, although significant restructuring plans are currently in progress. And I think it's really important to understand that currently as Eskom is structured, it is not meeting the needs of the people of South Africa, or the customers of electricity, whether they are domestic, commercial, industrial, agricultural, mining customers. Eskom is failing its customers. And we cannot just continue doing the same old thing. We have to, or Eskom has to, reinvent itself. It should not be backward looking. It needs to look to prepare itself for the future. There is no going back to the glory days of Eskom. Those days are over. The world has fundamentally changed, and it's completely undesirable to go back to that state, because it is not fit for purpose in the current world that we live in.
So do the likes of the Energy Action Plan presented by Cyril Ramaphosa, the President, and, for example, the changes we're now anticipating because of the state of disaster declaration, do those speak then to the Eskom that we need, an Eskom of the future?
So if you look at the President's plan, there are short, medium, and long-term issues. And one of the medium to longer-term issues is the restructuring of Eskom, and it is spoken about in the emergency plan, and it was also spoken about by the President in his State of Nation address, where he indicated that the Department of Public Enterprises and the current Minister, DPE Minister, would continue to be responsible for the restructuring of Eskom, the creation of the independent grid company separate from Eskom, and the establishment of a independent system and market operator, and a competitive, diversified generation sector where Eskom's current power station assets would effectively be concessionized and operated by independent operators. The assets would still remain those of Eskom, but it would concession them out to operators who can run these assets properly and not as they are currently being run.
And is it fair to say, as Eskom turns 100 years old, that the bad far outweighs the good at the utility?
Well, as I say, Eskom has a very long history, and there were high points and low points in this history. So you may remember it was started in 1923 by Hendrik van der Bijl, who was tasked by the government at the time, that is the Smuts government, to industrialize South Africa. So it was part of the industrialization of South Africa, and that was an important part of South Africa's history at that time. Eskom started to serve bulk users of electricity, and that largely meant the mining industry at that time. Industry was really dominated by the mining industry. Eskom then became a bulk supplier to the formerly white municipalities, who in turn distributed electricity to their municipal residents and businesses in the municipal areas, which were predominantly, in fact, almost exclusively white domestic users and customers. And this is a low point in Eskom's history, that it failed to serve the needs of black people in South Africa. But it changed in about 1992 when Eskom saw the writing on the wall, and the management at the time, headed by Dr. Ian McCrae, embarked on a massive electrification campaign to serve those that were formerly unserved. And over the next decade, great strides were made in the electrification of South Africa, and that no doubt is one of the high points. And another high point that I can mention is the establishment of a national transmission grid that stretches across the country with high voltage transmission lines serving the far corners of the country. And today even we have a relatively well-performing transmission grid. It does suffer some constraints. It has been underinvested in the last decade for reasons of Medupi and Kusile hogging a lot of the financial resources of Eskom. But certainly I think the achievement of the national grid is one of the major achievements of Eskom, and a significant asset that is going to serve the future Eskom, which I think is going to become more of a transmission grid company, and its generation assets, as I say, will be concessioned out to independent operators. So we're in a highly uncertain state at the moment. Eskom is performing very poorly financially, operationally, environmentally, and a lot of effort now is going into trying to sort this out. And on top of those issues, of course, is the endemic corruption, maladministration, procurement irregularities, and basic criminality that exists both within Eskom and amongst its suppliers and contractors. Not all of them, of course, but certainly have had a devastating impact on Eskom.
Chris Yelland, Managing Director at EE Business Intelligence, thank you so much for your time today.